It's God Boy again, here to talk about God and the things thereof. So last time I was talking about a whole bunch of nonsense about being invisible and stuff like that. The invisible nature of life and atoms and how they're invisible too. And that's also one of the paths that we have to embrace is transcendental truth. The only way to God, or back to the Godhead, as it is called, is by the boat of transcendental knowledge. So just imagine a big giant sea. We're over here and God's over here. And we got to cross that gap with just pure knowledge and prayer. That's the only way to get back to the Godhead and the original goal of life. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a very significant scripture because it stated the transcendental truths about 5,000 or 4,000 BC. So that BC means before Christ. Now, let's talk about the boat of nescience that we have to travel, which is transcendental truth. The human being, as he should know, from his pitiful experiences in life, he should know that every time that he does evil, right? Like if he steals something, there isn't going to be any God to come down and reprimand him. He only gets reprimanded if other human beings catch his dirty deeds. And he's going to be done dirt cheap that way. So the human beings think that they're very clever because of this thing called free will. And some of the human beings are so clever enough that when they steal, lie, cheat, commit adultery or murder, that there's nothing in creation that's watching them or doing anything else too. Like after I commit murder, I could just go around and murder other people. Why? Because no one's watching me. See, the human being thinks he's very clever. He doesn't realize that there's this transcendental truth, that there's a spirit always watching him. Now, why is that spirit always watching him? God says it's omnipresent and omniscient. Well, here's the part of the truth to that, is that God appears as individual consciousness, individual I, and individual I am. That's the name of God. Now, the name of God was given to Moses in the Old Testament. Now, as I was talking about before, about this book called the Bhagavad Gita and about the Indians and how they had God revelation, well, it's the same God. See, the personality of Godhead, known as Lord Sri Krishna, came from what? Something called the Godhead. And we also have this other historical figure known as the Son of God, Jesus Christ. And where did he come from? Well, he also said he's from God. So that's another thing is the Bible of the Indians, known as the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata. These things are the Lord's work from the one God. Now, they weren't lying when they said that he was the transcendental personality, a person from God. And Jesus Christ didn't lie when he said he's the Son of God. So there's teachings here. And in the Old Testament, this teaching of the Son of God was given to Abraham. God looked upon us, or at least some of us, because this transcendental I resides in all individual beings. Now let's get to this transcendental I before we get into Abraham. Now everybody can say I, and everybody can say I am. But everybody relates to this I with the fleshly concept of bodily form. So this I likes to go to the gym and train. So this I just identifies itself with a physical body. And not only that, but when I close my eyes, I also see my physical body there and all of the physical body's aspirations. But it doesn't realize the transcendental truth, and that the one I that I am is the same I in all other individual beings. And if people, again, don't embrace these truths, then they're not going to reap the fruits of transcendental consciousness. Now, this I that I am revealed itself to Moses as the ineffable name of God, which is I am. And that's Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. Now, something happened to me over the course of my life, and in the year 2022, I was revealed the scriptures, and I was given the criterion, if you will, especially that of the Quran, of the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Bhagavad Gita, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, Confucius works of his Analects, the Analects of Confucius. All of these are the transcendental truths of the one Godhead, because the one Godhead's name, even in the Bhagavad Gita, is not Lord Sri Krishna, it's I am. See, there's a chapter in the Bhagavad Gita clearly states that the wind blows out of fear of me. The fire rages out of fear of me. Death collects its taxes out of fear of me, for I am the Lord. Now, names are very important. You see how the Lord says his name is I am the Lord. He didn't say his name is I am God, the Lord. He didn't say his name was I am Allah, the Lord. He didn't say his name was I am Lord Sri Krishna, the super transcendental personality of Godhead. That is my name, the Lord. He said, just like he said to Moses in Exodus 3, verse 14, I am the Lord, and I will send my I am unto you to free thy people from Pharaoh's tyranny. And that will be my name. That's also, verse 15, 16, maybe especially verse 17. It says that this I am is my name forever. So the world has no idea about the transcendental name of God. What is the name of God? Well, when we get into Scripture, see, the new testimony of this supreme Spirit of God came by the Son of God, Jesus Christ. And the transcendental truth about this I am is, notice how he says, I am the truth, the way, and the life. He doesn't say Jesus Christ is the truth, the way, and the life. It is that same very I am that God gave to Moses. So let me put it to you in plain English. God gave his Son, Jesus Christ, to Moses, and that Spirit, the Spirit of God, is known as I am, which is Jesus Christ. See, in John chapter 1, it says the Word of God was with God in the beginning, which is the entire, before this world was manifested. That's transcendental consciousness. Even he says to the Jews, I think this is John 7, near the last chapters of John 7, that this transcendental consciousness, even before Abraham was, I am. So now let's get into Abraham. Now, if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't mention the Son of God. Nothing in world history mentions a Son of God. All men of old have been just worshiping the one God. And when Abraham came on the scene, this is now the Old Testament, God, the one God, revealed his only begotten Son to Abraham. That's why Abraham had to give up his son, Isaac, in faith. Now, God gave, see, this is what isn't included in Scripture. All we have is just some God asking for some mortal's son. And that's not how it is, okay? God went to this quote-unquote mortal and said, look at here, mortal. I will give you the secrets of creation. I will give you the foundation of the world. I will tell you everything that's going to happen within this creation. I will give you the mysteries of my only begotten Son. Do you trust me? And he said, yes. And the Lord said, good. Now your sacrifice for my son is your son. And I will raise a nation through your seed and his. Now God didn't take Isaac and kill him. What they did was raise the transcendental Spirit of God through Abraham. Now the Jewish people are not the Jewish people. They are the transcendental supersoul of God. That's the one God as well that is preached also in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why we can't get names. That's why we have to clear up names here. Notice how the personality of Godhead was preached to the Indian people 5,000 years before the Son of God was preached and revealed to the world. And God also, now why would God do this as well too? Keep his name hidden and keep spiritual consciousness with just in this day and age now. So you can't get enlightened, you can't drink the Holy Grail with just pure transcendental knowledge from the Orient. You can't get it by the Buddha. The Buddha is not the real light of the world. If you do obtain some form of spiritual consciousness with transcendental knowledge, especially through the Bhagavad Gita or what they would say Krishna consciousness, then that spirit will throw you over to actually Jesus Christ to fulfill Scripture. Because God, this Spirit of God is very mysterious and it works with Scripture. See, I wasn't revealed the Scriptures up until 2022 until I was revealed the light that enlightens all men. That's why I'm trying to tell you that enlightenment is real and there's a process to enlightenment as well. And it's knowing it's knowing that truth, the truth of the spiritual I. The fact that since I am, and the Lord created, as it says in Genesis, and this is what it also says in the Bhagavad Gita, that our individual spirit is exactly the same as the Spirit of God, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no distinction. That's what the factual position of the human being is. He's a spiritual being, and there's no distinction between him and God. That's what he has to understand, and that's also what you have to embrace, again, day by day, week by week, month by month. If you keep with this is called the letter of truth. And if you maintain this truth within your consciousness, that's what we call meditation and prayer. So it's like someone that goes to the gym. If they really want to get jacked up, if that's the game out there, then you have to have the knowledge. It's not just about steroids. So that's another thing too with cheating spiritually. You can't cheat yourself spiritually. There's no cheating to God. God knows your heart. And if you're motivated to seek the things of God, then God will reward you. It's that simple. Just like if you go to the gym and you're honest with your efforts and you acquire the perfect knowledge, then you will acquire your goals, because knowledge and principles don't lie. That's another thing about truth. Truth is always apparent in one's experience because it's based off of factual knowledge and principles. That's also a part of God. God is a principle as well. And that's one of the things too, that it's, again, a spiritual principle that you have to understand and embrace day to day with your thinking, with your thoughts, with your feelings. And just what I was saying before, that the human being is invisible. That's something that I said before in the last video. So you have to embrace that as well. That your thinking and your feeling, this I that I am, is invisible in the image and likeness of God, because God is invisible. As we could see, God is not out in the world. God can only be in one's experience through one's own individual consciousness, and only through the enlightened state of that individual's consciousness. God does not appear in the human scheme of events and affairs. And that's because of this truth as well. Now we have to understand one principle first, like I said, to embrace your spiritual I. I am not in the body, and God is not exclusive just to me. God is impersonal, which means he's available to everybody. And all of God is available to anyone that seeks God because of the virtue of I. Anybody can say I, and anybody can say I am, and that's the ineffable name of God. That's the ticket to getting into God, but realizing that you're invisible. Remember, no one's ever seen your thoughts, no one's ever seen your feelings. Just because people's seen the body, the actual thoughts and feelings that I am produced this effect. And that's a transcendental truth that you have to embrace. And by always embracing these truths, you're meditating upon that. We're not thinking of the things of the world. So that's another thing about approaching transcendental knowledge, is coming to Scripture. Jesus Christ is the only way to God. So if you study the Bhagavad Gita and understand God, you'll understand this phrase in John chapter 6, verse 40, where it says that if you're taught by God, God will throw you over to me. All people that are taught by God will be taught by me, and nobody comes to God but through me, and that me is Jesus Christ, the I am, that invisible I am. So again, one has to embrace that. Now one has to also understand the goal of this endeavor, actually. Now we're not obtaining things of this world. God's not going to give you God consciousness so you could have more material things. There's a hidden truth here, and here's one of the things that we have to embrace, is man's fall from grace. Adam and Eve is a transcendental fact. Now this I, that I am, is not from this world. Remember, it's spiritual. And we have to embrace, like I said, the fall from grace. And what that entails is man has lost his transcendental relationship. And he embodies now, since he fell from grace, let's talk about Adam and Eve a little bit. See, this isn't analogies or mythologies. God wants you to embrace this as transcendental truth. There's basically two kingdoms, this world and the kingdom of God. And if you want to read more about that, that's in book 2 of Ezra, chapter 7, verse 50, where it says the Most High made two worlds because Adam transgressed his commandments. So this material world and God's celestial kingdom. Also, the mission of Jesus Christ was to seek the kingdom of God. And that's in Matthew chapter 6. That's in the last verses there, like verse 30 to verse 33 or whatever, is to seek the kingdom of God. That's why we're not to seek the things of this world. That's why we devote our thinking and our feeling to transcendental truths, which is always keeping one in the atmosphere of prayer. So we're controlling and disciplining ourselves not to think of the things of this world. And that's what purifies the mind and purifies the heart into understanding and embracing transcendental knowledge. Now, one of the spiritual truths that we embrace is the fact that Adam and Eve are not from this earth at first. The Garden of Eden is not on earth. It is not in this material creation. It's in God's celestial creation, in the mind of God, if you will, the transcendental creation of God. And in the first mystery, I'll call it, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve lived one with God, you could say. They had no knowledge of their fleshly bodies. Now, God made man in his image and likeness. And that image and likeness is of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. And he made them male and female whole. Now, in the Garden of Eden, they had no knowledge of their flesh. And that's also made apparent in the Quran. And the Quran, chapter 7, verse 20, it also says that. Now, God created, again, man with his spirit, his image and likeness, which is invisible, immortal, eternal, and infinite. He also grabbed the elements of this material creation, which is the air, water, fire, and earth, and blended them into the spirit of Adam. But Adam did not have knowledge of these material aspects of his being. The Quran, chapter 7, verse 20 says, the flesh was concealed. Now, simply put, in our mortal fleshly lives, we can't see the spirit. Okay? So just imagine we're in the Garden of Eden. We can't see the flesh. And if you can't see the flesh, you can't develop forms or concepts of the flesh inside your own consciousness. So in the Garden of Eden, they had no knowledge of their flesh. Okay? That's one of the first mysteries, is they had no knowledge. Their flesh was concealed of them. We have to understand this, because this part of the mystery is the fall of grace. So how does man have death in his consciousness? If, quote unquote, your spirit is eternal, immortal, and infinite, like God is, then why do, quote unquote, human beings die? That's because they have not been reborn in the spirit. That's because even in the Bhagavad Gita, they are not, O twice born, surrendered souls unto the Godhead. That's why human beings die. It's because they were given this consciousness of the apple of death and two powers, which is good and evil, which is the story of Eve. Now, Eve was seduced by the evil one, Satan, in the first mystery. I'll just tell this the first mystery of the Garden of Eden, because there's two mysteries to the Garden of Eden. See, when the Master resurrected by the glory of God, he was given another teaching after his resurrection. And that teaching is called the Pistis of Sophia. And that's a teaching, I'm not going to talk about that. Anyways, I'll tell you just the first mystery, what's known in the Bible. So, all of a sudden, Eve ate this apple, okay? And then as soon as she ate this apple, her flesh, her body appeared. And what's more significant of this is her genitalia appeared to her. And she started hiding herself, her nakedness now. Now all of a sudden, the flesh appeared in their consciousness. And she seen her nakedness and was ashamed. So shame comes with inside one's mind, and one knowing the flesh with inside one's mind. All right, so as soon as she ate the apple, the flesh was exposed in their consciousness, as well as out in the open. And also, that was a disobedience, because Adam ate the apple that his wife gave him, and he disobeyed God. God told him not to eat the apple, but he obeyed his wife, you see. And this is very significant, because now that the disobedience of God happened, God clothed us with a tunic or a shirt of flesh and brought us into this material world. A fall from grace happened. So now man knows good and evil, and he has knowledge of death. And he is in this material world. There's significant books that are not in the Bible, and they're called the first books of Adam and Eve. But the more significant thing about this in consciousness is, now Adam is enslaved to his wife. Now, the thing with mortal consciousness is, since human beings embrace death, this is what is known in the Bhagavad Gita as the contaminated consciousness. And the contaminated consciousness knows death, and it knows the knowledge of the three modes of material nature. So now, your consciousness, right, fell from grace, and it just knows forms out in this quote-unquote material world, and what is pleasurable and what is not pleasurable. That's the apple of good and evil. So now man has contaminated consciousness. He doesn't know the one God. See, that's the thing with the path of liberation and coming onto the path of the one consciousness. See, it says also in Mark I forget which chapter, maybe chapter 4, where the master, some guy asked Jesus Christ, or it's like, what's the greatest commandment? What do we have to do to, what's the greatest commandment and law for God? And this is when Jesus Christ said, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one. So this means that there's one God, one consciousness. And because man has eaten this apple, he's developed contaminated consciousness, knowing two things, good and evil, knowing a consciousness now of what's good and what's evil, where before he did not know those things. See, as soon as Eve ate the apple, our flesh became exposed, and the knowledge of good and evil already aroused death, and it contaminated man's spiritual consciousness, and he fell from grace. That's embracing transcendental truth. Now, the human being is in darkness. This is what in old times, even in scripture, Bhagavad Gita mentions the darkness a lot. In John chapter 1, I am the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend. So what is this darkness? Darkness is basically just material nature. It's basically atoms. Atoms in themselves have no life. Human beings in themselves have no life. Why? Because they're unaware of their transcendental fall from grace. Oh, the human being already exists with death. He cannot have life. What he has is darkened state of consciousness. And he only has thoughts and feelings that only relate to his fleshly form of being, which he thinks exists within his mind as well as it does out here in this world. See, he's unaware of his invisible nature. People that take, as in Matthew chapter 6, now this is like verse 8, the master says the way to God is not taking thought. Do not take thought for this world, but seek the kingdom, because God already, well, he doesn't say seek the kingdom, I'm kind of paraphrasing. But he says, don't take thought for your life, because God already knows your need. Now, the human being has to take thought for this body, for the bodily concepts of I, me, and my. And that's all generated from this apple, or what we could say the false ego. Darkness just believes in the flesh. And the fact that the flesh also exists out here, and it also exists in here. And that's what's called darkness. So all thoughts that relate to the fleshly form of being, if you relate yourself like I, it's all about, remember, the I, relating and identifying yourself with I. If you relate yourself to the flesh, like you say, all that exists, even in my mind, is just the body, and also that body appears real to me in my mind, then you're just entertaining darkness. And God cannot give you any light, any grace, any guidance, any truth. The human being is a branch. This is now John chapter 15. He's a branch that's cut off from the tree of God and is withering and dying, and it's just going to get thrown into the fires of hell. Now, hell is not a concept. See, that was also preached in the Bhagavad Gita, because man is unaware of the transcendental personality of Godhead as it was preached then. He's unaware of his spiritual grace. He's only acting within the material modes of nature and the false ego. So the flesh and the fleshly concepts of body appear in one's own mind. And that fleshly body, or that fleshly being, just gravitates towards good and evil, that transcendental apple. But in Bhagavad Gita, it is known as the three modes of material nature. Mundane good, they added one more, which is passions, and then there's ignorance. So here's all human beings gravitate towards, because they believe in their bodies inside their own minds. That is darkness. That's the false perception of life, the false ego. And the false ego attaches itself to ignorance, attaches itself to passions, and it attaches itself to mundane good. So let's talk about that mundane good for a bit. The human being that believes that he's good, he's a good person, or he has good friends, or he's got a good wife, he's got a good job, or he just relates to good of life with just material objects. That having a good house is the good of life, or having a good wife is just what's good about life. See, that's what's living in darkness, because the human being thinks that material objects is good. The Master Jesus Christ, when he was asked another law, someone asked him, "Hey, good master, what do I have to do to inherit the kingdom of God?" And he rebuked the guy. He said, "Why thou callest me good? There's only one good, and that's the Spirit of God. That's the Father." See, if you don't relate to the invisible as the only good, or the I that I am as the only good, then you're just attached to the flesh and the fleshly concepts of form and mundane good. See, that's what the Bhagavad Gita says, mundane good, is most people's consciousness are just attached to the material good of life. And that's not spiritual, because it's not practicing or putting your faith in the invisible spirit. So, just like I said, the false ego has 3 modes of living. There's also a secret 4th mode of living, and I'll get that after we explain a little bit more about darkness and how the false ego attaches itself to the material concepts of this life. Now, passions is one thing as well. People are passionate towards sports, or or anything, any intellectual idea. People are passionate towards any idea. And any idea that's form is basically also the false ego, because it just gravitates towards either passionate towards good or passions toward ignorance. Now, ignorance is a big thing in this life, because I would say 80% of human beings are living under ignorance, because they just believe in their government, or they believe in their race, they believe in their just whatever, something stupid, who cares? Superstition even. They don't know truth, and they'll never know God, because God's invisible. And to the ignorant just believe and worship form. Or even if they don't worship form, they worship abstract, invisible, or spiritual ideas, like sorcery or idolatry. If you believe that a cross gives you spiritual powers, well, that's idolatry, because the real spirit is the individual I, the I that I am. So the false ego attaches itself to the 3 modes of material nature, and that's because contaminated consciousness and its fall from grace. And all of these modes of nature, doesn't matter how, let's talk about the good. You can have a good wife, but she can't help you, O kind sir, when death comes around the corner and reaps its sickle of your harvest. So what money, O kind sir, is going to buy your way from death? See, all these things are beliefs as well. The human being lives off of beliefs and ideas, and beliefs and ideas to him are like sun to the plants. If the human being doesn't embrace the correct letter of truth, then he cannot grow. And the only way human beings can grow is if they reconnect back to God. See, that's the original idea about the Bhagavad Gita, is liberation in the path of Godhead, which is the remedy for all problems of ignorance, all problems of the material nature, all problems of ignorance, passions, and material good. All problems of life are solved by the 4th mode. Now, the secret 4th mode of living. It's like if anyone's played video games, you play Zelda, right? You come across a room and all you hear is like do-do-do-do-do-do-do. A secret sound opens up and you go through the door. You're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then you see these treasures. You're like, oh my God. That's what God is. God is this secret mode of living, because it takes one away from the false ego. And one has to keep embracing these truths. Just like now, the story of the prodigal son is very important, because we have to embrace this fact as well. I'll tell the transcendental truth right now, is the fact that there is no material nature, or there is no flesh, or there is no law inside one's own consciousness. There cannot be, because for the simple truth, one cannot just make a apple or some fleshly anything and bring it out into the world. All of man's miseries are from his mental concoctions and these mental pictures of form, of bodies, of places, and how he relates to just these mental concoctions and pictures that appear in his own consciousness, because they don't appear out in the world. What appears out in the world is just the worldly affairs, the trees, the plants, the animals, and all the other human beings walking around. Nobody really knows of one's own individual nature, what goes on inside their thinking, what people are suffering, or even what people are pleasuring about. Nobody knows what goes on inside one's own consciousness, because it is contaminated with the pictures of the flesh. Now, the secret mode of living is not to live by these pictures that are generated by the self or the false sense of self creating thoughts about the flesh. So here's an idea about that, okay? People are trying, it's hard to understand now. I was a fat kid for most of my life. So in my mind, I'd close my mind, and even though I'm fat out here, that weight would live within inside my mind. And when you close your mind and you concoct these pictures of your fleshly form, for me, it created miserable states of conditions, because I did not like being fat. It didn't matter what I liked or didn't like. You see, this good and evil. It didn't matter what I liked or didn't like. The mind creates mental pictures just because it's in this material creation, and we don't know the truth. So the thing is, you walk around in this world now to try to counteract this miserable fat condition. So for a while, you try to go on and see, that's when people they take thought now. And when the master in Matthew chapter 6, see, that phrase of not taking thought has to be studied. So the human being starts taking thought for his miserable fleshly corpse that he thinks exists inside of his consciousness. Okay? So for a while, the human being is going to counteract his miserable bodily condition with knowledge. So how not to become fat. So he has to go on a diet. He has to learn how to eat. He has to learn how to exercise. He has to learn how to live his lifestyle a certain way to counteract that original condition, which he thinks exists within his consciousness, you see? So everyone struggles with their quote-unquote bodily appearance. Now, I was fat. It doesn't matter. Now, what I realize in life is everyone struggles with their bodily appearance. Even skinny people struggle with their skinny appearance. And I think that's kind of funny too. But I don't know that. See, you don't know other people. You can't just go inside their head and see what the hell's going on there. Because no one has ever seen the other person. That's why you have to really understand the invisible nature and really meditate on the invisible nature and really meditate on the fact for the past 25 and 30 years, we've been taking thought for the atoms that don't exist really. And that's the trick, or you could say the secret of spiritual consciousness. We've got to hammer home is none of these fleshly things exist within inside your consciousness. So here's where purity comes by. Now we have to purify ourselves. So what do we think about now? That's the fourth mode of living in prayer, is now we are devoted to the acquisition of enlightenment, spiritual consciousness. And to remember now that this I is invisible. So like the prodigal son, he goes out into the world, right? And that's us. We're all prodigal sons because we're all in this material creation far away from God's home or from the house. And the way back to the Lord is not to dine with the swine. And what that means is getting yourself entangled with human ideas and human beliefs about, oh, this is just a YOLO or a woke age or any crap, any idea that relates itself to the bodily concepts of my, me, and I, trap the entities still in material creation. And remember, the message of the Christ and the message of Bhagavad Gita is liberation from this material creation. Spiritual consciousness is the acquisition of God appeared to one, and now we live in this fourth mode of living where in Matthew chapter 6 we don't take thought for the things of this world. Before, taking thought for the things of this world created the fleshly concepts, or it created, this is what it does, is it creates misery, it creates disease. And even people that are good, that have wealth, that have good family, if you're so good, then why do people get disease? Why do good people die young? Or why do evil people keep living forever, it seems? And it does seem that way as well, too, in this human scheme. That you have to understand, too, if your good was so good and you don't acquire spiritual consciousness, then even the good gets stricken down because they're living under sensual pleasures. The material body's 5 physical senses generate just pleasures. So the seeing is one of the senses, the hearing, the tasting, the smelling. All of that is geared towards just pleasures of the flesh. And if one is entangled in sense pleasures, it doesn't matter if he's in ignorance or in good, this consciousness is what creates disease for the living entity because he still resides in death. One has to realize he's the prodigal son, and he's been taking thought for his fleshly concept of I, me, and I. I, me, and mine, sorry. Like, this is my body. And it's not, because you exist within the body of God, which is invisible, which is I am. One has to keep practicing these transcendental truths. One has to keep praying. See, just like one had taken thought into this world and developed activities for this body, this is what the Bhagavad Gita calls the fruitive activities. So all of a sudden this body, right, was fat. And now it had to develop the fruitive activity of going to the gym and taking more thought for this body and trying to counteract the miserable fat condition. You see, gathering more information about the body still contaminates the consciousness. And all it's doing is using its physical prowess to change one condition to another condition in material form. It's not using its energy for enlightenment or liberation. So that fourth path, remember, the entity has been entangled in fruitive activities of economic advancement, trying to get money. And here's one thing, too, that they forgot about the Garden of Eden, is man's consciousness is attached to just some woman. So because he's breathing this air, which is not the life of God, this air hypnotizes. See, this consciousness, this contaminated consciousness acts like a hypnotization because it keeps hypnotizing oneself into the belief of a fleshly existence. And the males are hypnotized towards their sexual pleasures because that's one of the things that was exposed to them in the Garden of Eden. So for the males, they're always just entranced by sexual desires. And if they're not gratified, because the sense gratification of touch is not gratified through sexual desires, then the human being, especially males, go through much misery. And they try now to counteract this miserable sexual desire by maybe getting a job or maybe improving them. See, they create forms and concepts of what is called a self. They hallucinate about a material form. My body's too fat and it has to be skinny in order to arouse the sexual desire. You see, it's all mental concoctions of this physical form. And it's been taking thought because this contaminated consciousness is polluted with mental concoctions of sexual desire. And it acts like a hypnotism. And it confuses the living entities into going out into the world and trying to perform their sexual desires. And it makes these living entities try to get a job and get a vein in their bicep and drive around with a Honda Civic with a half tank full of gas to pick up some ass, you see? It's all a state of man's contaminated consciousness, which acts as a hypnotic sense of being. And it's only hypnotism because it tries to gratify his five physical senses. So if his touch isn't satisfied, he's in all sorts of misery. And also, that's the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, is also like man's family life. If he's too attached to this concept of a female inside of his mind, you see, that's also the contaminated consciousness that he got from eating the apple. He's subject now to this fleshly concept of a female. And that all just exists as a hypnotic state of man's consciousness. He now has to satisfy this hypnotic state of just a female. And once he acquires one, he doesn't really know her. He knows just of this hypnotic sense of a female that he's trying to satisfy. So when he's in a relationship and this female that he can't never satisfy in the flesh because he doesn't know her, he just knows his hypnotic sense of the flesh, his contaminated consciousness. If he can't please this woman through economic advancement or sexual gratification, then the relationship ends up in misery. And that's why there's a lot of, divorce and crap in the world, adultery. It's because people have contaminated consciousness and they're only geared toward their sexual desires. So how do we become liberated of this contaminated consciousness? How do we make our way back up to the Garden of Eden? The only way is through the spiritual recognition of your invisible nature. There's only one I appearing as all individual consciousness, all individual being. There's only one intelligence, which is the one God, the one omniscience. And for you not to take thought anymore about this world. So the way back to God is by prayer, meditation, and emptying oneself, coming into the silence of one's own being. In Matthew chapter 4, when the Master was encountered by Satan, he was fasting and praying for 40 days and 40 nights. And this is what we live by. We also live by prayer, just like the Master does. He didn't live by economic advancement and family life. See, he lived by prayer out in the middle of nowhere. And he was encountered just because he's in the flesh with that hypnotic state of consciousness that makes you take thought for your body, which is known as Satan. So even Satan tempts the Master. Satan tells, just like Satan tempts us, it's this fleshly concept of being. And it always tells you that you're hungry, or you're horny, or you're poor, or you're stupid. It doesn't matter. It told the Master that he was starving. Satan goes up to the Master after he was fasting for 40 days and says, "Oh, you're really, really hungry there, aren't you? You're the Son of God, actually." See, because the Son of God is in the flesh, he doesn't have any God powers. This is also transcendental truth. The devotees like ourselves that live in prayer, we don't develop powers. We are given the promise of God and his and God awareness. We're given the promise that God is true and his promises are true, which is immortal, eternal life. We're not given any powers. So when Satan tempted Jesus Christ, the Son of God, he's like, "Hey, you're starving. Why don't you turn those stones into bread? Why don't you perform some miracle, some counteractive thing that we could do with the law of nature, with your own transcendental knowledge," which is also what the Bhagavad Gita says. We are not to counteract the laws of nature with our transcendental knowledge. And neither did Jesus Christ. He didn't make these stones turn into bread to satisfy his hunger. He wasn't a magician. He wasn't a sorcerer. He doesn't have any transcendental powers or mystical powers. And that's also what we live by, and that's also what the truth of the Bhagavad Gita tells us, that we just live by the transcendental truths. And that's all he did to counteract Satan. He didn't have to, bring out a paraphernalia, a cross or anything like that, sprinkle holy water around and sing a few praises and hymns. He just told him that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And that's what we do in prayer. See, we don't live by the forms or the effects of this world. We don't live by just bread alone. We get nourished by the Spirit of God. And I think in Luke chapter 15, the Master just tells us to pray for the Spirit of God. That's the only thing we are to pray for. We're not praying for forms, effects, or increased matter in a material world. Because, again, here's another transcendental truth. When God told Adam, after he ate the apple, when he was looking for Adam, he says, "Where are you?" Adam comes out of a bush hiding. And God tells Adam this transcendental truth of who told you that you're naked. Now, that truth also exists in our consciousness. When we're taking thought for the flesh, we have to tell ourselves, well, who told you that you're naked? So when you're in any type of situation now, we could go to the Bible and see some of the miserable situations that some devotees were put in, like Job. He lost his family, he lost his body, and he was put in a very miserable condition. And he had to rely on the Spirit of God. That's what the whole chapter is all about, is this temptation of this material world. See, the chapters of Job state that Satan talks to God, and God doesn't give any credence to Satan. God says, "What are you doing here? And why aren't you worshiping, or why aren't you looking at the guy who's worshiping me in righteousness, which is Job?" God looks at utter contempt at this figure of Satan anyways. And Satan says, "Well, Job is pretty righteous, but here's the tempter. Here's the tempter in all of our lives. That's why man shall not live by form and effect alone, because form and effect can be taken away from you." And Job had his family taken away from him as his first trial. This is what is known at spiritual initiation as the trials by fire, is when one's own material safeties, securities will be taken away from him. And in Job, Satan basically said to God, "Why don't we test his righteousness? See, he's acting all upright right now. He's praising your name, but what if I do something to him?" And Job says, "Don't harm a hair on it." God says, "Don't harm a hair on Job's head." And Satan then kills his family. He kills his kids, kills his wife, gets his cattle taken away from him. But Job ends up praising the Lord after all these calamities anyways. And Satan still is not satisfied. See, this personal sense of fear that resides in all of us. See, Satan resides in all of us because fear and death reside in all of us. And God has a funny way of cleaning the contaminated consciousness if one is purely devoted to the Lord. So just because one goes through the fires and has these things taken away from him doesn't mean that God isn't there. Now Satan goes back up to God and he says, "Now he's still praising your name because he still has his health. But why don't we take away his health and see if he's praising your name?" And this is what the devotees have to go through in life, is the trials by fire. So the Lord said, "Yeah, but don't kill him. Don't harm a hair on his head." And that's when Job had leprosy. That's when his body started decaying and dying. And there's no remedy for it. So just when the human being now is being confronted with spiritual consciousness, he reacts in a way that all contaminated consciousness reacts, which is in fear. He doesn't know what's going on, and he starts cursing God. God is trying to remove the fear out of all of our lives. And one has to be persistent on the path in just going to God. And that's only done by prayer and acknowledging the fact that God is invisible and so am I. That's also one of the truths that you work upon day by day by day. So in the story of Job, he ends up regaining all that he had before, and God ends up healing him only because Job kept up his relationship with God. Now, even though Job was going through his tribulations, he was crying and screaming. I was going through the things of Job as well, and I can relate because I was crying, screaming, and hating and cursing my own existence, and that's exactly what Job was doing. But God is trying to remove this contaminated consciousness of death. See, death doesn't really exist. It only exists within contaminated consciousness that thinks of the form and the flesh. That's why some sages, especially the Oriental sages, the Zen Buddhists, have come to the conclusion that you're just an imagination of yourself. And that's one of the keys to going back to the kingdom of God, is understanding that you've been taking thought for the flesh for 30, 40, how many years you've been alive, and that's the imagination of yourself. The fact that you've been taking thought for so long. Now again, the secret way is by prayer and by not taking thought. Who told you you're naked? So who told you about a physical body? Who told you about a physical world? See, this is the knowledge of this world. And that's one of the transcendental truths that we have to go by, is by who told you you're naked. So inside your consciousness, there is no fleshly being as Sam, who I am. There is no fat or skinny body that exists up here. Who told you you're naked? That's one of the things that you have to live by. It's going to be very difficult to live by Matthew chapter 6 and the devotional way of the Bhagavad Gita, of not taking thought for your life, and by living under prayer. It's going to unfold in stages. Prayer and this spiritual consciousness that one will obtain over time happens exactly over that, by your persistence. You're going to have to sit there, and you're going to have to be just like Job, he's in the lion's den. Or like Daniel too, he's in the lion's den. And you have to live by transcendental truth. It doesn't matter if the lion's attacking you. That lion outside is more like the magician trying to hypnotize you. Remember, there's no such thing as material form. So even if a material form out in the world is trying to attack you or hurt you, that's as what they call Maya. See, that's taking thought for the things in this world. And you have to be disciplined. You have to say, no. In my consciousness, there is no material form. You have to be disciplined to sticking to these principles. That's why God is a principle. Just like weight training. If you stick to these principles, you're going to get this result. You might not like sticking to those principles. It doesn't matter what you like. If you want this result, you have to stick to these principles. And that's the same as God. If you want God realization, you're going to have to stick to these principles of not taking thought for your life, and who told you that you're naked. So even though you're sick, right, you're only sick because you've been taking thought for this fleshly concept of form. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita calls the contaminated consciousness. So if one becomes sick in life, it is because he has not known the truth, and he has to become or get into the atmosphere of the truth, get into the atmosphere of prayer. That's when the Master says, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It doesn't say that God will make you free or Jesus Christ will make you free. It says knowing the truth will make you free. That's why it says crossing the boat from this world into the celestial kingdom of God is by the boat of knowledge. You have to know, and God has to make itself known to you, or else all you have is just a concept of God. If you don't devote yourself to these principles of God, then God can't make itself known to you, and therefore you don't have a God. All you have is just an idea. All you have is just a religion, not even God's religion, because God's true religion is just his only begotten Son in Jesus Christ. And if you don't believe in him, then you don't have a God. You have nothing. And that goes for anybody. John chapter 10, it says, I am the door to God. I am the door to spiritual consciousness. And remember, that's the ineffable name of God that he told to Moses. And that's also the ineffable name of God that's in the Bhagavad Gita. You see, I am that door. You can't go through me by any other means. So if you don't believe in this principle, if you don't believe in this teaching, then you don't have God realization. You have some other nonsense of this world, some other belief, some other superstition, and that's how it is. If especially see these ancient principles, especially in the Upanishads, that's absolute truth. God's only begotten Son was given to the mystics and the revelators of old, but the name wasn't known as Jesus Christ. So that's another thing that the New Testament says. That's one of the things that St. Paul teaches, is that men of old were taught of God. But now in this New Testament of Jesus Christ, that power of God was made known by the resurrection. And this is the new dispensation, the new secrets, the new mysteries of God. So one has to, again, one will get taught by God, but if you want that spiritual consciousness, if you want that enlightenment, I am the way. And that's the only way. Buddha can't give you that consciousness anymore because that's the old dispensation. And Doctrines and Covenants, now Joseph Smith is a revelator of Jesus Christ. He is a prophet of Jesus Christ. And I believe in the works of Joseph Smith. The Book of Mormon is true, and also the Doctrines and Covenants, which is more of an important work from Joseph Smith. It says that God wants us to cross the gates of old, which is the knowledge of old, which is basically by prayer and understanding knowledge, enlightenment, the Holy Grail, the quest for life, the quest of truth. And he wants us to pass these old ways, the old ways of Lao Tzu. See, Lao Tzu and Confucius and even the works of Miyamoto Musashi are true, but they can't get you enlightenment. Just because you read Lao Tzu and Confucius and understand it, they can't get you enlightenment. Even though they talk about it, even though they say they're the way, even though Buddha talks about being the way and the transcendental void, you cannot get any of these things by any of these people anymore. The New Testament of Jesus Christ, and I am the way, is the only way to get enlightenment that these people talked of as of old. You can't get enlightenment by just reading the Bhagavad Gita, or by reading the Bhagavad Gita, or by worshiping the personality of Godhead. You have to worship the I am within you. And that I am will lead you to the teachings of Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is that great I am. He is that great transcendental supersoul. He is the Savior of all mankind, and only he is the way to enlightenment into God's celestial kingdom. The transcendental New Jerusalem is true as well. That's also a part of God's promise. God's promise to you upon this path is not mortality. St. Paul says you're going to take off the clothes of mortality. And the only way you're going to do that is by the transcendental truths, by prayer, and you put on the clothes of immortality. And the only way to do that is by the spiritual I am and the new testimony of Jesus Christ, for he is that great I am. And the power of God is made known through his testimony and gospel by the resurrection. See, the resurrection, contaminated consciousness has to get removed, and so does death. That's why the power and testimony of Jesus Christ and the gospel of Jesus Christ is so important, because man has to die. He has to go through the gates of old, as God says. And the gates of old is the gate of death. And who's there to lift up one out of the gate of death? That is the spiritual I am. And because that spiritual I am, it says through his spirit, through the spirit of God, we will reign with him, or we will overcome. It says, I have overcome the world. And it's through prayer and getting into the contact of God realization that one overcomes death. One will get crucified and one will live the pattern of the Son of God. He will get crucified and get reborn or resurrected in spiritual consciousness. That's what the Master preaches about, being reborn again in the Spirit. That's what the Bhagavad Gita also preaches about, being, twice born, a surrendered soul. See, this formula is ancient. And the way back to God is by prayer and by acknowledging the correct letter of truth. I hope I've been helpful. I'm going to make a little bit more videos. I know this is getting a little bit long, but that's also part of spiritual consciousness, is just training and applying the truth day by day and living in the atmosphere of prayer. Because before you lived in the atmosphere of fruitive activities and taking thoughts for the things of this world, now you have to not take thought for anything and live within prayer, and not by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So that's when one might live in the atmosphere of meditation, live in the silence. And then if you're guided towards Scripture, whatever you learn from those Scriptures is the Word of God. So I hope that's been helpful. And also, too, you will hopefully acquire the real transcendental voice of God. So let's talk about that for a little bit, just before we go. The Jews had the Kabbalah, and in the Kabbalah they had the transcendental God expose its voice. And that voice is apparently androgynous, all love, and the only power of love, the only thing capable of love. That's why the impersonalization of meditation is very important. Human beings don't love. They are incapable of loving. Whatever love that you, see, this is the impersonalized meditation and prayer. Whatever love that you begin to experience is not your own, it's from God. Remember, why call me good? There's only one good, and that's God. Whatever good that you feel, whatever love that you feel, God is the only love and God's the only good. That's why God's the all-compassionate. It's not these feelings that you feel that come from yourself. That's God coming through you. So if you feel love or compassion towards someone, you have to impersonalize. You have to always practice these principles, or else you'll be lost in the nescience of material existence. I hope this helped one on their devotional path to the Lord. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a good day. Cheers.